I'm Haynes L. Harkey, Jr. The L is Lewis. I was born in my mother's bedroom in Lake Providence, Louisiana, on October 9, 1920. Well, let me start with my parents. He was, of course, Haynes L. Harkey, for whom I was named, and his wife was named Aline Wood, and that's where I got my beginning, because I was born in her front bedroom in Lake Providence. Graduated, of course, from high school, then went to Louisiana Tech in Ruston, spent 4 years, and got a degree there, and by then the World War II was really looming. But I intended to go to law school, so I went to Tulane and enrolled. While I was in my first year in law school, the bombing of Pearl Harbor took place. Of course, that changed the world for all of us. At midterm, I went down just to see what was available. I had a college degree, and I hoped I'd be able to get a commission in the Navy, New Orleans being a big Navy town. So that went down during midterm to the naval headquarters there in New Orleans, and by the end of the day, I was sworn into the Navy. And I expected to be sent to midshipman school immediately. That didn't happen, so I went back for my second semester in law school. And I finished that, and I kept waiting for orders and didn't get them, so I went back for the third semester. And I completed 3 semesters of law school before I got orders to midshipman school at Notre Dame. And of course, that's where I went. So my legal education was interrupted at that point. And I didn't get back there for 3 years after I got out of the Navy. And I just went straight on to New Orleans and went back to law school. Having served in the Navy, I didn't have to take the exam for admission to the bar. So I'm here by virtue of the legislature rather than my great knowledge. I knew I didn't want to go back to Lake Providence, and I had a friend who that I knew at the time, who lived in Monroe, and it was through that connection that his father, who was a lawyer, gave me this opportunity. And he gave me a position, and we called it Redmond and Harkey, and that's where I started. And then 2 or 3 years later, he died, and I was alone for a while, but already sort of involved in the Monroe community and the legal world up here, and so I just stayed there. And I had enough practice that I had developed to stay there and make a living. So I continued by myself for a while, and then Tom Hayes was by himself. He was a little older, and we decided that we'd get together and form a firm. So it was Haynes and Harkey. we did very well, and then we added Lewis Smith, and then J.D. Casio, and that's where the basic firm started. Tom Hayes was another lawyer, a little older than I was, and we did things together. He was very healthy, very much into sports, played golf and all sorts of things, and lo and behold, he got polio. During that time, I handled his practice and mine as well, and I forget, it was some months, I guess 4 or 5 months before he was able to come back in a wheelchair. And he never blinked, never complained. And when he came in the door that day, he took over his practice, and there we went. That first year up here, there were a lot of them getting married, so I was a single person, I guess you'd say eligible bachelor. And so I got invited to these parties. The way it would work, they'd say, we're going to give you a dinner, or we're going to do this or do that, and you can have so many people to come to the party. And they'd call me and others and say, we want to give a party for so-and-so, and we'd like you to come. And then the next half of the sentence was, and we'd like you to bring so-and-so. So I went through all the single girls at Summer that were available. As time went on, Barbara Falk and I became more serious, and then we decided to get married. And when she died, we had been married 64 years. Yeah, Jack Howard and I were good friends, and I represented him in his business. He was the one who appointed me as city attorney, which was then a part-time job. So if I hadn't had some other practice, I couldn't have lived on what the city was able to pay me. But it was fascinating work, and I enjoyed it. I was city attorney for 17 years. That was the length of time that Jack was mayor of the city. And each time he was elected, he named me city attorney again. And it opened up all sorts of fields that I would never have had an opportunity to do. I got involved in medical malpractice defense work. So I did that and was doing that when I retired. And that was interesting because the subject matter of all the cases were different. And you had to learn. I felt like I knew what the law was, but I had to learn the facts of each case from the doctor, and he was supposed to educate me and did educate me concerning what he did, or the nurse or whoever. And so I learned a lot of medicine along with it. Photography was what I knew something about and had dabbled with throughout my life. And so that was my hobby. And finally my wife let me hang a picture or two in our home, and now it's all over the place. So it's something that I learned to do and did fairly well, and made some pretty good pictures. Well, if I was going to pick out one case, it would be that capital murder case. And the way that happened was this lady came in to see me and about getting a divorce. And so I explained to her what her rights were, and we went over her properties and all those things, and she thanked me and paid a little fee, I'm sure, and that was it. And then as time went by, a month or two, in the middle of the night, I got a telephone call from the chief of police in West Monroe. And he said, "This lady over here says you're her lawyer." And he told me her name. I'd only seen her one time, but she said I was her lawyer. And she wanted to see me because she had just shot and killed her husband. And so I told him the next day when I got a chance to visit with the family, I said, "I'm not a criminal lawyer, and you better get somebody with a legal experience in that sphere." And so they went to Rayville and engaged a man by the name of Warren Hunt, who was well known as a criminal defense lawyer up in this area. And so they insisted on me helping him to the extent that I could. They tried her, and the jury found her guilty of manslaughter. We were able to appeal that conviction and get it set aside. So that was the end of step one. Then they tried a second time, and lo and behold, she was acquitted. I guess I'd sum it up by saying that I always wanted to be a lawyer, and I was one, and I was happy with it, and I couldn't think even today of anything that I would rather have done.